I'll keep her busy, you get the keys to her safe. The words sliced through the warm air of Giovanni's restaurant like a stiletto through silk. My daughter Julia leaned close to her husband Nathan, her voice barely above a whisper, intimate and conspiratorial. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get to the story. They thought the soft jazz playing overhead would mask their plotting. They thought the polite laughter from nearby tables and the gentle percussion of champagne flutes would drown out their treachery. They thought that at 70 years old, I had grown deaf to the world around me. They were catastrophically wrong. I didn't flinch. I didn't turn my head. I simply continued lifting my champagne glass to my lips, the crystal cool against my fingers, my smile perfectly arranged for the photographer Julia had insisted on hiring. We need to document this milestone, Mom. Your last birthday in the house. The house. My Victorian home on Sycamore Lane. The one I'd bought with the first real commission check I ever earned. The one whose walls held 45 years of my life. What struck me wasn't just the betrayal itself, I had suspected something was coming for months now, but the sheer mundanity of their tone. Julia might have been asking Nathan to pick up dry cleaning or stop for milk. Instead, she was instructing him to rob me blind, and she said it with all the emotion of someone ordering a salad. Nathan nodded, just once. I caught it in my peripheral vision, a sharp, quick bob of his head. His eyes flicked toward me for the briefest moment, checking to see if I'd registered anything. I kept my expression serene, grandmother soft, as I set down my glass and reached for my dessert fork. I need to step out for a moment, Nathan announced, pushing back from the table with practiced casualness. Forgot to grab something from the car. Won't take long, 20 minutes, tops. Julia's hand found mine across the white linen tablecloth. Her fingers were warm, her grip gentle. Mom, you look absolutely radiant tonight. Has anyone told you that? 70 never looked so elegant. The compliment rolled off her tongue like honey laced with arsenic. I watched Nathan weave through the maze of tables toward the exit, his stride purposeful despite his attempt at nonchalance. At the door, he paused, just for a second, and glanced back. Julia raised her wine glass in what anyone else might have mistaken for an affectionate gesture. But I saw it for what it was, a signal. The plan was in motion. 43 minutes. That's how long he was gone. I know because I counted every single one while Julia performed her Oscar-worthy distraction routine. She pulled out her phone and swiped through photos of my grandchildren, Connor and Lily, even though she knew I'd watched them just yesterday afternoon. She asked about my arthritis medication, whether my prescriptions needed refilling, if I needed her to pick up groceries for the month. She reminisced about childhood trips to Cape Cod, laughing at memories I wasn't sure she actually had or had simply invented for this performance. Across from us sat my business partner's daughter, Simone, who had joined us as a surprise guest. Sweet Simone with her bright eyes and genuine enthusiasm, completely oblivious to the heist being orchestrated around her. She chatted about her upcoming art exhibition, about finally getting her master's degree, innocent in a way that made my heart ache. I played my part flawlessly. I nodded in all the right places. I laughed when expected. I tasted each course, the lobster bisque, the herb-crusted salmon, the tiramisu that tasted like sawdust in my mouth. On the surface, I was Eloise Leonard, the celebrated jewelry designer, the gracious matriarch savoring another year of life. Inside, I was counting seconds. Calculating moves. Waiting. Because there was something Julia didn't know. Something Nathan was about to discover. When the restaurant door finally opened again, I saw him before Julia did. Nathan moved through the dining room like a man who had seen a ghost, no, like a man who had become one. His face had lost all color, leaving his skin the shade of old parchment. His hands, usually so steady and confident, trembled as they gripped the back of his chair. A thin sheen of sweat glazed his forehead despite the restaurant's perfectly controlled temperature. Julia shot to her feet, her composure cracking for the first time all evening. Nathan? Why do you look like that? What took you so long? He stared at me. Then at her. Then back at me. His mouth opened and closed twice, working soundlessly like a fish pulled from water. When words finally came, they arrived in broken fragments, each one edged with panic. The safe. Your mother. It wasn't. I set down my fork with deliberate precision, the soft clink against fine china somehow louder than the entire restaurant. I met Nathan's eyes and held them, let him see that I knew exactly what he'd found in my study. Or rather, what he hadn't found. Is something wrong, dear? I asked, my voice perfectly modulated, grandmother sweet. You look like you've had quite a shock. Julia's voice cut through the moment, sharp with barely concealed panic. Mom, Nathan's not feeling well. Maybe we should call it a night. Sit down, Julia. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. The steel in those 3 words did the work for me. She sat. I folded my napkin, taking my time, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable for everyone except me. Simone glanced between us, confusion clouding her features, finally sensing that something had shifted in the air. Then I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the child I'd raised alone after her father died, but a stranger wearing her face. You know, I said conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather, your father built that safe into the study wall 45 years ago. Did I ever tell you that story? About how Martin insisted we needed something secure, something permanent, even when we could barely afford the mortgage. Julia's face went carefully blank. Nathan remained frozen, sweat now trickling visibly down his temple. He said, Eloise, everything we build from here, every piece you create, every design that comes from your hands, it all needs protecting. Not from the world, but for our family. For Julia. I let the words settle, watched them land like stones. For Julia. That's what he said. He built that safe for you, darling. To protect what would one day be yours. Mom, I don't know what you think. I interrupted gently, that it's time I told you exactly what your father would have wanted you to know. About legacy. About what it means to build something with your own hands, and what happens when someone tries to take it before it's offered. I reached for my purse, withdrew a small manila envelope I'd been carrying all evening, and placed it on the table between us. Julia's eyes locked on it like a rabbit watching a snake. But first, I continued, my fingers brushing the silver locket at my throat, the one that once held Julia's baby picture and now held only a tiny uncut sapphire. I think we should discuss what Nathan found in my safe tonight. Don't you? The color drained from Julia's face in a way that almost matched her husband's pallor. And in that moment, surrounded by the soft clink of silverware and murmured conversations of people enjoying their innocent Friday evening dinners, I began to tell them a story. Not the one they expected. Not the one they planned for. The true one. The story I needed to tell them began 42 years ago, in a hospital corridor that smelled of disinfectant and devastation. I was 28 years old when the police officer appeared in the waiting room, hat in hand, face carved with the kind of pity that precedes unbearable news. Martin Leonard, my husband of 3 years, father to our 18-month-old daughter, had been killed instantly when a delivery truck ran a red light on Meridian Avenue. The officer's words floated around me like debris in water. No suffering, didn't see it coming, nothing you could have done. But there was something I could have done. I could have insisted Martin stay home that rainy November morning instead of driving to the jeweler supply warehouse for materials we didn't urgently need. I could have gone myself. I could have changed everything with a single decision. Instead, I became a widow before I turned 30. Julia doesn't remember her father. She was too young. Sometimes I wonder if that's a mercy or a curse, to grow up with only photographs and secondhand stories of the man who wanted to give her the world. Martin had been a craftsman, a metalworker with hands that could coax gold into impossible shapes. He'd taught me everything about setting stones, about the architecture of jewelry, about how beauty requires both vision and structure. You have the vision, Eloise, he used to say, his fingers guiding mine as we worked late into the night at our kitchen table. I'll teach you the structure. After he died, I had to become both. The life insurance policy covered the funeral and 3 months of mortgage payments. After that, I was on my own with a toddler, a house I couldn't afford, and a half-finished collection of jewelry designs that Martin and I had planned to pitch to boutiques in Boston. I had 2 choices: sell the house and move back to my mother's apartment in Providence, or finish what we'd started. I chose the latter. For 2 years, I worked 3 jobs. I designed jewelry at night after Julia fell asleep, my hands cramping around pencils and pliers, my eyes burning from the close work under inadequate lighting. I sold pieces at craft fairs on weekends, Julia strapped to my back in a carrier, her tiny fists occasionally grabbing at the samples I displayed on folding tables. During the day, I waitressed, I cleaned houses, I did whatever paid enough to keep the electricity on and formula in the cabinet. Leonard Designs was born not from privilege, but from desperation alchemized into art. My first real break came when a buyer from Nordstrom saw my work at a holiday market in Cambridge. She ordered 50 pieces, pendants, earrings, bracelets, with a deposit that felt like winning the lottery. I used that money to rent a tiny studio space, to buy proper tools, to hire my first assistant. Within 5 years, Leonard Designs had a flagship store in Boston. Within 10, we had 6 locations across New England. Within 20, we were international. The Victorian house on Sycamore Lane, the one Martin died trying to keep, became paid off. The safe he'd installed in the study, once empty except for our marriage certificate and Julia's birth certificate, gradually filled with contracts, deeds, original sketches, the physical documentation of everything I'd built from ash and grief. But Julia only ever saw the result, never the cost. She grew up in the renovated house, in bedrooms I could finally afford to furnish beautifully. She attended private schools where her classmates' parents were doctors and lawyers and trust fund inheritors. She had music lessons, art classes, summer camps in the Berkshires. Everything I never had, I gave her, believing that my struggle could purchase her ease. I didn't realize until too late that ease without context breeds entitlement. Somewhere in her teenage years, Julia stopped seeing me as her mother and started seeing me as an obstacle between herself and what she believed she deserved. She resented the long hours I worked, even though those hours paid for her college tuition. She dismissed my accomplishments as luck rather than labor. When I tried to teach her the business, hoping she might one day take over Leonard Designs, she showed up late to meetings and complained that retail was beneath her talents. After she married Nathan, a commercial real estate developer with smooth manners and calculating eyes, our relationship became transactional. Birthday visits. Holiday obligations. Grandchildren presented for requisite amounts of grandmother time, then whisked away. She called when she needed something, a loan for Nathan's latest investment opportunity, a reference for the country club, connections to my wealthy clients. I gave what I could, hoping that generosity might rebuild what grief and ambition had eroded between us. But 3 months ago, something shifted. Julia's visits increased in frequency but decreased in warmth. She'd appear at my door with expensive coffee and rehearsed smiles, asking questions that seemed casual but landed with surgical precision. "Mom, where do you keep all the old business documents? I was thinking we should digitize everything." Or, "Does your insurance still cover the contents of the safe? You should really update that policy." One afternoon, I found her in Martin's study, my study now, standing too close to the wall where the safe was hidden behind a reproduction of Monet's water lilies. She jumped when I entered, laughed it off as, just admiring the painting, but her eyes had already given her away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying moments I'd previously dismissed, Nathan asking about my estate planning during Thanksgiving dinner. Julia inquiring whether I'd considered simplifying my assets now that I was getting older. The way they exchanged glances when I mentioned keeping certain family heirlooms, until the right time. They weren't planning for my death. They were planning for my displacement. The realization sat in my chest like swallowed glass. I waited another month, watching, documenting, hoping I was wrong. But Julia's performance only intensified. She brought the grandchildren more often, their visits feeling less like family time and more like reconnaissance missions. She complimented my health while asking pointed questions about my will. She praised my independence while suggesting I might be more comfortable, in a smaller place, somewhere easier to maintain. Finally, I called Miriam Delaney. Miriam had been my first employee at Leonard Designs, my business partner for 20 years before she retired to focus on her gallery in Provincetown. If I had a sister, it would be her. She answered on the second ring, and I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I need your help moving some things, I said. Quietly. There was a pause. Then, what kind of things, Eloise? Everything that matters. We met the following Tuesday at a private storage facility Miriam's lawyer had recommended. Together, we transferred the contents of my safe into a climate-controlled vault registered under Miriam's company name, every piece of original jewelry from Martin's and my early collection, every deed and contract, every sketch that documented Leonard Designs' evolution, the cash reserves I'd kept for emergencies, and the small velvet pouch containing my late husband's final gift to me, an uncut sapphire he'd planned to set in an anniversary ring he never lived to finish. What are you going to leave in the safe? Miriam asked as we locked the vault. I smiled, though it felt like baring teeth. Exactly what they deserved to find. That evening, I returned home and sat before the empty safe in my study. My hands trembled, not from age, but from the weight of what I was about to do, as I placed the decoys inside, photocopies of documents that looked authentic but held no legal power, costume jewelry I'd collected over the years that sparkled like the real thing under certain light, and a sealed velvet box containing something I'd prepared specifically for this moment. The box held ashes. Not from the fireplace, but from the original draft of my will, the one that had left everything to Julia. I'd burned it myself, watching the paper curl and blacken, feeling something similar happen inside my chest. Beneath the ashes, I'd placed a USB drive. And beneath that, a letter written in my own hand, each word chosen with the precision I usually reserved for setting stones. As I locked the safe and returned the Monet to its place on the wall, I whispered to the empty room, to the ghost of my husband who'd built this fortress for our daughter's future, to the younger version of myself who'd believed love alone could bridge any distance. You want to play games, Julia? Then let's play. The camera arrived in unmarked packaging on a Tuesday afternoon in late July, 2 months before my 70th birthday. I held the small device in my palm, no bigger than a lipstick tube, and marveled at how technology had miniaturized surveillance into something a grandmother could order online and install herself. The product description promised discreet monitoring and crystal clear footage even in low light. What it didn't mention was how it would feel to use such a thing against your own child. My hands shook slightly as I positioned it inside the blue ceramic vase in the hallway, the one that sat on the console table directly across from my study door. The vase had been a gift from Julia 10 Christmases ago, back when her presents still came with genuine sentiment instead of calculated positioning. The irony wasn't lost on me. I adjusted the angle 3 times before I was satisfied, making sure the lens had an unobstructed view of anyone approaching the study. Then I filled the vase with silk hydrangeas, also from Julia, from some birthday or Mother's Day I couldn't quite remember, and stepped back to examine my work. It looked innocent. Decorative. Utterly harmless. Perfect. But the camera was only the beginning. If Julia and Nathan were truly planning what I suspected, they'd need access to the study, time alone in the house, and confidence that I wouldn't notice small disturbances. I decided to give them all 3, along with just enough rope to hang themselves. I spent the next week setting traps that would be invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for them, but unmistakable to someone who was. First, I adjusted the Persian rug outside the study door, shifting it 3 inches to the left so that one corner no longer aligned with the baseboard. Anyone walking normally wouldn't notice, but anyone trying to enter the study quietly would disturb it further. Second, I placed a legal envelope on my desk, cream-colored, expensive stock, sealed with old-fashioned red wax that I'd stamped with my initials. The envelope was empty, but its placement suggested importance. I positioned it at a precise angle and took a photograph on my phone, so I'd know if anyone had moved it. Third, and most cleverly, I changed the safe's combination. For 45 years, it had been Martin's birthday, November 7, 1952. Julia knew this. I'd told her years ago during one of our rare moments of mother-daughter closeness, back when I still believed we might build something together beyond blood obligation. Now I reset it to a sequence only I would know. March 15, 1983. The date Leonard Designs Incorporated. The date I became something more than Martin's widow. Then I waited. Julia's first visit came that Saturday, right on schedule. She'd fallen into a pattern over the past months, weekend afternoon visits, always announced with just enough notice that I couldn't claim to have other plans, never so spontaneous that she might actually catch me off guard. "Hi, Mom," she called from the foyer, her voice bright with performative cheer. "I brought you those lavender scones from that bakery you like." I met her in the kitchen, noting the expensive bakery box, the designer handbag, the subtle desperation in her smile. "How thoughtful, sweetheart. Coffee? Please." She settled into a chair at the kitchen island, crossing her legs with studied casualness. "You know, I was thinking, have you given any more thought to that financial advisor Nathan recommended? He really specializes in estate management for people in your phase of life." Phase of life, as if 70 meant incompetence. "I'm quite content with my current arrangements," I said mildly, pouring coffee into her favorite mug, the one that said, "World's Best Daughter," that I'd bought her in college. Another irony. She sighed, the sound carefully calibrated to express loving concern rather than irritation. "I just worry about you, Mom. Alone in this big house. So much to manage. So much responsibility. I've been managing just fine for 42 years, Julia." "Of course you have." She reached across the counter to pat my hand. "But you don't have to do everything alone anymore. That's what family is for." I smiled and said nothing, letting her fill the silence with more reassurances, more suggestions about simplifying my life, more hints that she and Nathan were ready to help shoulder the burden of my assets. After she left, claiming a hair appointment she was already late for, I went straight to my laptop and pulled up the camera footage. The timestamp showed that 23 minutes into her visit, while I was in the powder room, Julia had slipped down the hallway toward my study. She didn't enter, not yet, but she stood at the door for a full 2 minutes, her hand on the knob, clearly debating. Then Nathan's voice crackled through her phone, "Not yet. We need to be sure she's completely distracted." She'd pulled away from the door, but not before glancing back down the hallway twice, mapping her route, calculating her timing. The Persian rug remained undisturbed. The envelope untouched. But I'd seen enough. Over the following weeks, I watched the pattern repeat with variations. Julia visited every Saturday, sometimes alone, sometimes with Nathan, always with gifts and concerns and questions that circled closer and closer to the safe. The camera captured everything, Julia measuring the hallway with her eyes, Nathan photographing the study door with his phone, both of them whispering in the foyer about after her birthday and when she's out of town. Each video I watched alone in my bedroom late at night, the blue laptop light painting my face in shades of grief. Each one drove the knife of betrayal a little deeper. But what haunted me most weren't the recordings of their scheming. It was the memories their betrayal had summoned, ghosts of a relationship I'd apparently invented in my desperation to believe Julia and I had ever truly connected. I remembered teaching her to design her first piece of jewelry when she was 12. We'd spent an entire Saturday in my studio, her small fingers fumbling with pliers as I guided her through creating a simple wire-wrapped pendant. When she'd finished, she'd held it up to the light, her face illuminated with genuine joy. "Look, Mom. I made something beautiful." "You did," I'd told her, pulling her close. "You're my brightest gem, Julia. More precious than anything I could ever design." She'd worn that pendant for months. I'd believed it meant something. Now, watching her pace outside my study like a thief casing a house, I wondered if that 12-year-old girl had ever existed, or if I'd simply projected my own longing for connection onto a daughter who'd always seen me as nothing more than a vault to be opened. The internal conflict consumed me. Part of me, the part that had rocked Julia through midnight fevers, that had saved for years to buy her the car she wanted for her 16th birthday, that had walked her down the aisle when she married Nathan, that part still wanted to believe this was somehow a misunderstanding. That I'd misheard the whisper at the restaurant, misinterpreted the surveillance footage, manufactured a betrayal out of paranoia and loneliness. But then I'd watch another video. See another calculating glance. Hear another whispered conversation about my diminished capacity and what we're owed. And the truth would crystallize again, hard and cold and undeniable. You need to be careful, Miriam warned during one of our weekly phone calls. I'd been sharing selective details, not wanting to burden her with the full scope of my daughter's betrayal. If they think you're weak, Eloise, if they believe you're not paying attention, they'll strike when you least expect it. I know, I said quietly. So what are you going to do? I stared out my bedroom window at the garden Martin and I had planted together 4 decades ago, now overgrown and wild in a way that felt appropriate. I'm going to let them think exactly what they want to think. And I'm going to make sure that when they do strike, it's on my terms, not theirs. You're baiting them. I'm giving them enough rope. Miriam was silent for a moment. Then, your birthday dinner. That's when you think they'll make their move. It's the perfect opportunity. Public celebration, lots of distraction, built-in excuse for Nathan to step away. They've been planning something around my birthday for weeks. I've heard them mention it twice on the recordings. And you're sure about what you've put in the safe? I'm sure. Another pause. Eloise, I have to ask, are you doing this for justice, or for revenge? I considered the question carefully. Does it matter? It might. To you. She was right, of course. Miriam usually was. But I didn't have a clean answer. What I was planning existed in the murky space between protection and punishment, between defending what I'd built and destroying what little remained of my relationship with my daughter. I'm doing this, I finally said, because I refuse to be a victim in my own story. Martin built that safe to protect our family's future. If Julia wants to steal from it, she'll find out exactly what kind of future she's chosen. After we hung up, I sat down at my desk, the same desk where I'd designed my first collection with Martin, where I'd drafted the business plan for Leonard Designs, where I'd signed the contracts that had built an empire from grief, and I began to write. The letter took me 3 hours to compose. Every word mattered. Every sentence had to carry the weight of 42 years of motherhood, of sacrifice, of disappointed love. I wrote it by hand, using the fountain pen Martin had given me on our first anniversary, the one I reserved for only the most important documents. When I finished, I read it through twice, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. Then I folded it carefully, slid it into a cream-colored envelope, and sealed it with red wax, pressing my initial into the soft surface before it hardened. On the outside of the envelope, in my most elegant script, I wrote, "For those who mistake love for possession." I placed it in the safe, along with the velvet box containing the ashes of my old will, the costume jewelry that would fool them for exactly as long as I needed it to, and the USB drive that held every recorded second of their conspiracy. Then I locked it all away with the new combination they'd never guess, hung the Monet back over the wall panel, and returned to the hallway. The camera blinked its tiny red light from inside the vase of silk hydrangeas. The Persian rug sat at its deliberately misaligned angle. Everything was ready. I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror, 70 years old, silver-haired, wearing the emerald brooch I'd designed to celebrate Leonard Design's 30th anniversary. I looked like someone's grandmother. Someone harmless and declining, someone whose safe could be robbed without consequence. I smiled at my reflection. Let them come. We return now to Giovanni's restaurant, to the silk-draped tables and the champagne that tastes like victory laced with poison. Julia's performance has reached its crescendo. She's been flawless all evening, the devoted daughter orchestrating the perfect 70th birthday celebration for her beloved mother. She's worn her most elegant dress, a midnight blue sheath that probably cost more than my first month's rent 40 years ago. Her makeup is impeccable, her smile never wavering, her hand finding mine across the table at precisely calculated intervals. But I can see the cracks in her facade if I know where to look. The way her left eye twitches slightly when Simone asks about my plans to travel next spring. The tension in her jaw when I mention casually that I've been organizing my archives. The almost imperceptible glance she shoots toward Nathan every few minutes, checking, confirming, counting down. Nathan, for his part, has barely touched his salmon. He's pushed the herb-crusted fish around his plate for 20 minutes, creating the illusion of eating while consuming nothing. His knee bounces under the table. I can feel the vibration through the floor. He checks his watch 3 times in 5 minutes, each glance more obvious than the last. They're nervous. Good. Mom, Julia announces suddenly, rising from her seat with theatrical flourish, I have a surprise for you. A second cake, something special I had custom-made at that patisserie you love in Cambridge. But Nathan left it in the car, and with this crowd. She gestures vaguely at the bustling restaurant. I don't want him to have to fight for parking again. Nathan, would you mind terribly running home to grab it? It's in our garage fridge. The lie is smooth, rehearsed. Nathan nods, already pushing back from the table. Oh, that's not necessary, I say mildly, watching them both. The cake we already had was more than enough. Nonsense. Julia's hand tightens on my shoulder, her fingers pressing just a fraction too hard. It's your 70th birthday, Mom. You deserve something extraordinary. Extraordinary, yes, that's certainly what tonight will be. Well, if you insist. I smile up at Nathan, holding his gaze until he's forced to look away. Don't rush, dear. Take your time. Something flickers across his face, confusion, perhaps, or the first whisper of suspicion. But Julia's hand is on his arm, her eyes communicating something urgent, and he nods curtly before heading toward the exit. I watch him go, counting his steps. 17 paces to the door. A pause as he retrieves his keys from the valet. Then he's gone, swallowed by the October darkness outside. The clock starts now. So, Mom, Julia settles back into her chair, her smile brilliant and brittle. Simone was just telling me about her new exhibition. Weren't you, Simone? Sweet, oblivious Simone launches into an enthusiastic description of her upcoming gallery show, something about mixed media and feminist perspectives on domesticity. Normally I'd be fascinated, I've always admired her work. But tonight, every word sounds like it's coming from underwater. I nod and smile and make the appropriate encouraging sounds while my mind tracks the minutes. Nathan should be at the house by now. 15 minutes drive in light traffic. He's parking, probably on the street rather than the driveway, less obvious, easier escape if something goes wrong. He's approaching the side door, the one that leads directly to the kitchen, the one Julia had a spare key made for last month without telling me. I found the receipt in her coat pocket during her last visit. She'd never been good at covering her tracks. Remember when you taught me about setting stones, Mom? Julia's voice cuts through my thoughts. She's leaned forward, her expression soft with manufactured nostalgia. I must have been, 12? 13? You were so patient with me. 12, I say. You made a wire-wrapped pendant. Blue sea glass from our trip to Rockport. Yes. Her eyes brighten with what almost looks like genuine emotion. I love that summer. Just the two of us, walking the beach, collecting treasures. It's a masterful performance. She's chosen a memory that actually happened, one I cherish, and she's weaponizing it to keep me distracted. To make me believe, perhaps, that somewhere underneath her greed, my daughter still exists. I let her talk. I ask questions about the pendant, about that summer, about the little cottage we'd rented that smelled like salt and old wood. I perform my role as the sentimental grandmother, easily diverted by pleasant memories. All the while, I'm counting. 23 minutes now. Nathan has entered the house. The camera in the vase is recording his every movement. He's walking down the hallway, past the deliberately misaligned Persian rug. His footsteps are careful, quiet, but the old floorboards betray him anyway. They creak in the same places they've creaked for 45 years. He's standing outside the study now, his hand on the brass knob. His heart must be hammering. Does he feel any guilt? Any shame? Or is it all drowned out by the anticipation of what he thinks he's about to claim? Earth to Mom. Julia waves her hand in front of my face, laughing. Where did you go just now? Sorry, sweetheart. Just wool gathering. You know how us old folks get. She laughs again, but her eyes are sharp. You're not old, Mom. You're timeless. Simone excuses herself to take a phone call, leaving Julia and me alone at the table. The moment she's gone, Julia's performance shifts subtly. Her smile remains, but there's an edge to it now. Are you feeling all right? You seem distracted. Just thinking about the future, I say honestly. About what comes next. Well, that's what Nathan and I wanted to talk to you about, actually. After tonight, after the celebration, we thought we might sit down and discuss some options. For the house, for the business. Ways to make things easier for you. How thoughtful. She doesn't catch the frost in my tone. Or perhaps she does and simply doesn't care. 37 minutes. Nathan has opened the study door. He's inside now, standing before the Monet, his hands probably trembling as he swings the painting aside on its hidden hinges. The wall panel is exposed. The safe is waiting. Does he know the combination has been changed? Has Julia tried it herself, confirmed it still works? Or are they about to discover the first of many surprises I've prepared? My phone buzzes in my purse. A notification from the security app connected to my camera. Motion detected. I already know what it's showing, but I pull out my phone anyway, pretending to check messages while I pull up the live feed. There he is, pixelated but unmistakable. Nathan, his face sheened with sweat despite the house's cool temperature, his fingers working the safe dial. He tries the old combination first, November 7th, 1952. Martin's birthday. The combination Julia told him would work. The safe doesn't open. I watch his face contort with confusion, then panic. He tries again, slower this time, making sure he's hitting each number precisely. Nothing. Everything okay, Mom? Julia's voice is strained. Oh, yes. Just an email from the studio. Nothing urgent. I angle my phone so she can't see the screen, but I keep watching. Nathan has pulled out his phone now, texting frantically. Under the table, Julia's own phone buzzes. Once. Twice. 3 times in rapid succession. She doesn't check it. Can't, without revealing that something is wrong. But her face has gone pale beneath her careful makeup. 41 minutes. On my screen, Nathan is trying random combinations now, his movements growing jerky with desperation. Then he stops, stepping back from the safe with his hands raised like a man at gunpoint. He's seen something. The camera angle doesn't show what, but I know. He's noticed the wax seal on the envelope I left on my desk, the one marked with my initials. He's wondering if it contains the new combination. He's debating whether to break the seal, whether that will trigger some alarm I've set. He breaks it. Inside is a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. You're closer than you think. It's not the combination. It's a taunt. But it's enough to send him back to the safe with renewed determination. This time, in his panic, his hand brushes against the dial and it spins freely. I'd left it unlocked after all. The safe was never about keeping them out. It was about controlling what they found when they got in. The door swings open. Nathan stares into the safe for a long moment. Even through the grainy camera feed, I can see his body go rigid with shock. His hand reaches in, withdraws the velvet box. He opens it. Ashes spill across my late husband's desk. At the restaurant, Julia's phone buzzes again. This time she can't help herself. She glances down, reads the message visible on her screen even without unlocking it. Safe opened. Taking everything. She looks up at me, and for a fraction of a second, triumph flashes across her face. Then she catches herself, smooths it away, and raises her wine glass. To you, Mom. To 70 beautiful years and so many more to come. I raise my own glass slowly, deliberately. Let the moment stretch. Let her think she's won. Then I speak, my voice soft enough that only she can hear over the restaurant's ambient noise. I hope the cake was worth it, Nathan. Julia's glass freezes halfway to her lips. The color drains from her face so quickly I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. What? The second cake, I say pleasantly, louder now. The one Nathan went all the way home to fetch. I do hope it's worth the drive. Around us, the restaurant continues its Friday evening rhythm, conversations flowing, silverware clinking, soft laughter from nearby tables. But at our table, time has stopped. Julia's mouth opens, closes. Her carefully constructed performance crumbles in real time. I don't. Mom, what are you? I set down my glass with precise care and lean forward, my voice dropping to a whisper that cuts like a blade. Did you really think I wouldn't hear you, Julia? Did you honestly believe that 70 meant deaf, distracted, defenseless? Her phone buzzes again. And again. Nathan, I imagine, is having his own revelation in my study. The ashes. The USB drive. The letter I wrote specifically for this moment. I don't know what you think you heard. I'll keep her busy, you get the keys to her safe. I quote her own words back to her, watching her face collapse. Those were your exact words. Whispered to your husband while I was cutting my birthday cake. While Simone was taking photos. While you smiled at me like you loved me. Julia's eyes dart around the restaurant, checking who might be listening. But I've chosen our table carefully, corner position, enough ambient noise to mask our conversation, far enough from other diners that we have privacy for this particular performance. You moved it, she breathes, understanding flooding her features. You moved everything. Did you really think I wouldn't notice your questions becoming interrogations? Your visits becoming reconnaissance? Your affection becoming transaction? My daughter, my only child, the baby I rocked through midnight fevers, the girl I built an empire to provide for, stares at me like I'm a stranger. Perhaps that's fitting. Perhaps we've always been strangers playing at family. Where is it? She hisses. Where did you put everything that matters? I smile. Somewhere you'll never find it. Somewhere safe from people who confuse inheritance with theft. Simone returns to the table, her phone call finished, her bright smile faltering as she registers the tension crackling between us. Is everything okay? Everything is perfect, I say, never breaking eye contact with Julia. We were just discussing family legacy. Weren't we, darling? Julia's phone erupts with a call. Nathan's name flashes on the screen. She doesn't answer. Can't answer, not without confirming everything I've just accused her of. The phone rings. And rings. And rings. Finally, it stops. A text appears, call me. Now. Julia's hand trembles as she reaches for her wine glass, needing something to do with her shaking fingers. The glass slips, tipping over, sending Pinot Noir spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. The perfect birthday dinner, carefully orchestrated to distract me while they robbed me blind, has become a crime scene. And the night, I think with grim satisfaction, is only just beginning. Nathan's hands won't stop shaking. He sits in his car 3 blocks from my house, the velvet box open on his lap, gray ash staining his expensive trousers. In the dim glow of the streetlight, the powder looks almost silver, like the dust from a collapsed star. He'd grabbed everything from the safe, the box, the USB drive, the sealed envelope, and fled my house like a man escaping a fire. Only now, parked beneath an oak tree shedding its October leaves, does he allow himself to examine what he's stolen. The note inside the box is written in my hand, on heavy cream cardstock that costs $3 a sheet. Asterisk for every piece you try to steal, remember this, some things must be burned to stay pure. What you're holding are the ashes of my original will, the one that left everything to Julia. I burned it the day I heard her call my love, leverage. May these ashes remind you both what you've truly inherited, nothing but ash and consequence, asterisk. E.L. Nathan reads it once. Twice. His lips move silently, trying to make the words mean something other than what they say. Then he looks at the USB drive, small and black and damning in his palm. He knows what's on it. He has to know. His phone rings. Julia, calling for the 7th time since he fled the house. This time, he answers. Tell me you have it, she hisses, her voice sharp with panic. Tell me you got the jewelry. I got ashes. What? Ashes, Julia. The safe was full of fucking ashes and a note and his voice cracks. There's a USB drive. I think she recorded everything. The silence on the other end stretches so long he checks to see if the call dropped. Then, get rid of it. Destroy it. Break the drive, throw it in the river, I don't care, just. It's too late. Nathan's voice has gone hollow. She knows. She knew all along. That thing she said at dinner, I hope the cake was worth it, Nathan, Jesus Christ, Julia, she was watching me. Just come back to the restaurant. We'll figure this out. We'll. No. He's already starting the car. I'm going home. I'm done. He hangs up before she can respond, before she can wrap him up in another scheme, another plan, another lie. The velvet box sits open beside him, ashes scattered across the leather seat like evidence of a cremation. He drives through the Cambridge streets, past the restaurants and boutiques that have replaced the working-class shops of his youth, and wonders how he became the kind of man who breaks into his mother-in-law's house to steal from her while she celebrates her 70th birthday. The answer, he knows, is sitting at a table at Giovanni's, probably already crafting her next move. Julia doesn't return to the restaurant. She drives straight to my house instead, arriving just after midnight with her key already in her hand, the spare she had made without permission, the one she thought I didn't know about. She doesn't knock. Simply unlocks the door and strides through my foyer like she owns it, her heels clicking sharp accusation against the marble floor. I'm waiting in the living room, sitting in Martin's old leather armchair, a cup of chamomile tea cooling on the side table. I've changed out of my birthday dress into comfortable slacks and a cashmere sweater. No need for performance now. The show is over. Mom. Julia's voice carries from the hallway. Mom, someone broke into the house. I was driving by and saw the side door open and I think. She stops in the doorway when she sees me. Sees my calm face, my steady hands, the tablet resting on my lap. I know, I say quietly. He had help. Julia's mouth opens, closes. Her prepared speech, the shocked daughter discovering a crime, dies unspoken. Instead, she pivots, her expression shifting from concern to confusion with practiced ease. What are you talking about? Who had help? Mom, we need to call the police, someone broke into your... Nathan, I interrupt. Nathan broke into my house at approximately 8:47 this evening. He entered through the side door using a key you had duplicated last month at Harbor Hardware. He proceeded to my study, opened my safe, and removed its contents. I tapped the tablet screen. Would you like to watch? The color drains from her face, but she rallies. 42 years as my daughter has taught her resilience, if nothing else. That's insane. Why would Nathan? Because you told him to. I tap the screen again, and her own voice fills the room, whisper thin but unmistakable, asterisk, I'll keep her busy, you get the keys to her safe. Asterisk. The recording continues. Her laugh. Nathan's murmured agreement. The soft sound of them plotting over my birthday cake while I sat 3 feet away, smiling. Julia stands frozen, watching herself commit conspiracy in high definition. When the clip ends, she doesn't speak for a long moment. Then, slowly, her shock crystallizes into something harder. You recorded us. You were spying on us. I was protecting myself. From your own daughter? Her voice rises, righteous indignation flooding in to fill the space where her lies used to be. What kind of mother? What kind of daughter? I set the tablet aside and stand, my 70-year-old body steady with purpose. What kind of daughter whispers about her mother's diminished capacity while planning to rob her? What kind of daughter sees her inheritance as something to steal rather than something to earn? Earn? Julia laughs, brittle and sharp. I've spent 42 years trying to earn your approval, your respect, your attention. Nothing was ever good enough for you. I wasn't creative enough for the business, wasn't brilliant enough to carry on the Leonard name, wasn't worthy of the empire you built with Dad. So you decided to take it instead. I decided to claim what's mine. She's shouting now, months or maybe years of resentment pouring out. Do you have any idea what it's like being your daughter? Living in the shadow of the great Eloise Leonard, the widow who built an empire from grief? I've watched you pour everything into that business, into those designs, into scholarships for strangers while you what, Julia? While you lived in a house I bought? Drove cars I paid for? Attended schools I funded? Married a man whose law degree I financed because you asked me to? She flinches. That's not fair. What's not fair is you confusing my generosity with weakness. Mistaking my love for an open vault. Julia's eyes glitter with tears that might even be genuine. You never loved me like you loved the business. Like you loved Dad. I was always second to everything else in your life. The words land like a blow, and for a moment, just a moment, I feel the old ache of maternal guilt. The missed recitals because of client meetings. The birthday parties cut short by design emergencies. The 1,000 small ways I chose Leonard designs over my daughter because the business needed me and I told myself Julia would understand someday. But then I remember her whispering over my birthday cake. Planning to drug me. Discussing my funeral arrangements while I was still alive. You're right, I say softly. I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. But I never stopped loving you, Julia. I just stopped being blind to who you'd become. You can't prove anything. Her voice drops to something cold and calculating. That recording, it's just conversation. It doesn't prove Nathan actually broke in. And even if it did, I had nothing to do with it. You can't. The doorbell rings. Julia stops mid-sentence, her eyes going wide. Who? That would be my attorney, I say, walking past her toward the foyer. And, I imagine, the police. The police? Julia grabs my arm. Mom, you can't be serious. You're not actually. I gently remove her hand from my sleeve. I filed a report 3 hours ago. Breaking and entering. Conspiracy to defraud. Attempted theft. The evidence is quite compelling. I'm your daughter. Yes. I meet her eyes, letting her see the full weight of my disappointment, my grief, my resolve. You are. And that's what makes this hurt so much. I open the door to find my attorney, Richard Morrison, standing on the porch beside 2 Cambridge police officers. Richard is 68, sharp as a blade, and has been my counsel since Martin died. He knows everything. The recordings. The trap. The ashes in the velvet box. Mrs. Leonard. He nods to me, then glances past my shoulder to where Julia stands in the hallway, her face ashen. Ms. Richardson. I'm sorry it's come to this. One of the officers steps forward. Julia Richardson? We need to ask you some questions regarding an incident that occurred at this address earlier this evening. Julia looks at me, really looks at me, and I see the moment she understands that this isn't a negotiation or a manipulation or a game she can win with tears and apologies. This is consequence, arriving at last. Mom, please. Her voice breaks. Please don't do this. I'm not doing this, Julia. You did. The moment you decided I was worth more to you dead than alive. Richard steps into the foyer, opening his briefcase with practiced efficiency. Mrs. Leonard has also asked me to inform you of changes to her estate planning. As of this afternoon, her will has been completely rewritten. Julia tears her eyes from mine to stare at Richard. What? Leonard Designs, the estate, all liquid assets, everything will be placed into a scholarship fund for young designers from underserved communities. The Eloise and Martin Leonard Foundation for Emerging Artists. He hands her a document. You're welcome to review the filing. It's already been notarized and submitted. I watch my daughter read the words that strip away her inheritance, her future, her carefully laid plans. Watch her face cycle through disbelief, rage, desperation. You wanted my fortune, I say quietly. You'll still have it, but only in the hands of those who deserve it. Young people who see design as art, not just profit. Who understand that legacy isn't about what you take, it's about what you create. You're leaving me nothing? Julia's voice is a whisper. I'm leaving you exactly what you've earned. The officers are asking her to step outside, to come to the station, to answer questions. Nathan's name comes up, they'll need to speak with him as well. Julia moves like a sleepwalker, following them toward the door, the document still clutched in her hand. At the threshold, she turns back to me one last time. I'm sorry, she says, and I almost believe her. I'm so sorry, Mom. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. Then she's gone, following the officers into the October night, and I'm standing in my foyer with Richard, the house suddenly too quiet, too empty, too full of ghosts. Are you all right? Richard asks gently. I think about the question. About my daughter in a police car. About the ashes in Nathan's lap. About the empire I built that will now belong to strangers who might appreciate it more than my own blood ever did. No, I say honestly. But I will be. Richard squeezes my shoulder and leaves, promising to call tomorrow with updates. I close and lock the door, all 3 locks, including the new one Julia doesn't have a key for, and return to the living room. My tea has gone cold. I pour it out and make a fresh cup, Earl Grey this time, strong and bitter and exactly what I need. Then I sit in Martin's chair, pull a soft blanket over my lap, and allow myself to cry for the daughter I thought I had, for the relationship that never truly existed, for the love I poured into a vessel that had a hole in the bottom all along. Outside, October wind rattles the windows. Inside, Eloise Leonard, widow, designer, mother, survivor, drinks her tea and plans for a future that no longer includes the one person she'd built it all for. The velvet box sits on my coffee table, a gift from Richard. He'd retrieved it from Nathan's car before the police arrived. I open it now, looking at the ashes that used to be promises, used to be inheritance, used to be a different ending than this. Then I close it and set it aside. Some things must be burned to stay pure. Tomorrow, I'll start designing again. Tomorrow, I'll begin building the foundation that will carry the Leonard name into a future I won't live to see. Tomorrow, I'll find a way to be something other than a mother betrayed. But tonight, I allow myself to grieve. Spring arrives in Massachusetts like a whispered promise, and I greet it from a window I never expected to call my own. The Victorian house sold in February, quickly, quietly, to a young family with 3 children who saw magic in the turret and possibility in the overgrown garden. I watched from across the street as they walked through for the first time, the smallest child running her hand along the carved banister with the same wonder Julia had shown at that age, before wonder calcified into want. I didn't cry when I signed the papers. The house had been Martin's dream, mine by inheritance, and staying there had begun to feel like living in a mausoleum. Every room held ghosts, not just of my husband, but of the daughter I'd thought I was raising, the family I'd believed we were building, the future that turned to ash in a velvet box. My new apartment overlooks the ocean in Gloucester, a 40-minute drive from Cambridge but a lifetime away from everything that happened. It's smaller, just 2 bedrooms, an open kitchen, a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows that frame the Atlantic like a painting that changes every hour. The light here is extraordinary, all silver and gold and the particular blue that only exists where water meets sky. I've turned the second bedroom into a studio. Not the grand workspace I had in Cambridge with its custom lighting and storage for 10,000 pieces of inventory, but something simpler. A sturdy table positioned to catch the morning sun. Drawers for tools and wire and the semi-precious stones I've begun working with again, nothing as expensive as what I used to design, but somehow more honest. The safe is gone. I donated it to a museum along with most of my archived pieces, 40 years of Leonard designs now preserved behind glass, a historical record of one woman's attempt to transform grief into beauty. What I kept fits in a small cedar chest that sits at the foot of my bed, letters from Martin, photographs of Julia as a child, before the calculating look entered her eyes, sketches from my earliest designs when I was still learning that silver could be coaxed into almost any shape if you applied the right amount of heat and pressure. Some mornings, I open the chest and look at those remnants of the life I used to have. Most mornings, I leave it closed and turn instead to the ocean, to the light, to the future I'm building from whatever pieces remain. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I teach jewelry making workshops at the Gloucester Community Center. The classes are free, open to anyone who wants to learn, though most of my students are young women in their 20s and 30s, artists and dreamers who work day jobs but harbor ambitions of creating something beautiful with their hands. I teach them what Martin taught me, that metalwork requires patience, that stones have their own logic, that every piece of jewelry tells a story if you listen closely enough. Last week, a girl named Amara, 23, Haitian American, hands scarred from restaurant work, created her first wire-wrapped pendant. When she held it up to the light, her face illuminated with the exact same joy I'd seen on Julia's face 30 years ago, and for a moment my heart cracked open all over again. But then Amara turned to me and said, "Thank you for teaching me this. For making it free. My mom always said I couldn't afford to be an artist, but maybe I can be both. The thing that pays the bills and the thing that feeds my soul." And I understood why I was here, in this sun-filled room with these hungry young hearts, instead of locked away in a Victorian mansion guarding treasures no one would ever see. Beauty means nothing if it's locked away, I told her, and meant it. The words have become something of a mantra. When reporters ask why I dissolved Leonard Designs and donated the proceeds to scholarships, when former colleagues question my decision to give away a fortune that could have sustained me in luxury for the rest of my life, I offer them the same simple truth. Beauty means nothing if it's locked away. Legacy isn't what you hoard. It's what you release into the world with open hands, trusting it will land where it's needed most. The letters started arriving in March. Plain envelopes, no return address, postmarked from different locations, Boston, Portland, even one from Burlington, Vermont. I recognized Julia's handwriting on the first one, though she's disguised it slightly, making her normally confident script smaller, more uncertain. I hold each envelope up to the light, as if I could divine its contents without breaking the seal. Then I place them, unopened, in a drawer in my kitchen, the one where I keep takeout menus and expired coupons and other things I'm not quite ready to throw away but have no real use for. Miriam thinks I should read them. What if she's genuinely sorry? What if she needs help? Richard thinks I should burn them. She made her choices. You owe her nothing. I think the truth lives somewhere between their advice, in the murky space where love and disappointment create their own gravity. I'm not ready to forgive, but I'm also not capable of complete severance. Julia is my daughter. That fact doesn't erase her betrayal, but it doesn't erase 42 years of motherhood either. So the letters accumulate, a growing stack of unopened possibilities. Maybe someday I'll read them. Maybe someday I'll find that enough distance has grown between that night at Giovanni's and whatever future I'm building that I can open them without bleeding. But not today. Not yet. Instead, I've made peace with a different kind of loss, the kind that comes not from death but from disappointment. Martin died and left a hole in my life that eventually filled with purpose and work and the satisfaction of building something lasting. Julia chose a different kind of absence, one that required me to grieve someone still living, still somewhere in the world, still occasionally sending letters I can't bear to open. Both losses hurt. Both reshaped me. Both taught me something about the weight we carry and the weight we choose to set down. Today is my 71st birthday. I wake early, before the sun has fully risen, and make coffee in the small kitchen that still feels almost too bright after decades in the Victorians' darker rooms. Through the window, the ocean reflects the pre-dawn sky in shades of pewter and rose gold. I carry my cup to the window seat I had installed specifically for moments like this, when the world is quiet and the light is perfect and I need to remember why I chose to keep living after everything fell apart. My sketchbook sits beside me, already open to a new design I've been developing. I call it the Guardian, a pendant featuring a central stone surrounded by a cage of silver wire that protects without imprisoning, displays without exposing. It's meant to be both shield and showcase, armor and art. It's meant, I suppose, to be me. I work on the sketch as the sun rises, adding details, refining proportions, deciding that the central stone should be uncut, rough, authentic in its imperfection. Something that doesn't need polishing to be valuable. Around my neck, Martin's locket rests against my heart. I touch it occasionally as I work, feeling the uncut sapphire through the silver casing, remembering his promise that some things are meant to be kept close, protected, saved for the right moment. I used to think that moment would be passing it down to Julia. Now I think perhaps it will be buried with me, a secret kept between Martin and me and the ocean that will someday scatter whatever ashes I become. Or perhaps I'll give it to Amara, or one of the other young designers who remind me why I fell in love with this craft in the first place. Perhaps the right moment isn't about blood, but about recognizing in someone else the same hunger for beauty that once drove me to transform grief into gold. A knock at my door interrupts my sketching. I glance at the clock, 7:47 a.m., too early for visitors, and find Miriam standing in my hallway holding a bakery box and wearing a smile that suggests she's pleased with herself. "Happy birthday, you stubborn, brilliant woman," she says, sweeping into my apartment like she owns it. "I brought scones and gossip and a complete unwillingness to let you spend today alone." I laugh, genuine and surprised. It's not even 8 in the morning. Which means we have the whole day ahead of us. She sets the box on my counter and starts making herself at home, finding plates, pouring coffee, arranging the scones with the same care she applies to her sculptures. I thought we could drive up the coast, maybe stop at that gallery in Rockport, have lunch overlooking the water. Very simple, very low-key, absolutely no hidden agendas or secret attempts to rob you. The bar is remarkably low these days. Good. I excel at clearing low bars. She hands me a plate with a still warm blueberry scone. Eat. Then get dressed. We're celebrating the fact that you survived another year of being spectacular. I take the scone, feeling something warm and grateful unfurl in my chest. This is what I have now, what I've chosen: friendship without agenda, beauty without price, days that unfold with possibility instead of dread. It's not what I planned. It's not the legacy I thought I was building when I sat across from Martin 45 years ago and promised to turn his vision into reality. But it's real. It's mine. It's enough. That evening, after Miriam has gone home and the apartment has settled into its nighttime quiet, I return to my window seat with my sketchbook and watch the sun set over the Atlantic. The ocean is performing its daily transformation, turning from blue to gold to silver as the light shifts and fades. Waves catch the last rays of sun and shimmer like molten metal, like all the jewelry I've ever made melted down and poured into the space between earth and sky. I lift Martin's locket, letting the uncut sapphire catch the dying light. It glows from within, all its imperfections transformed into character by the right illumination. Some treasures, I whisper to the empty room, to the ocean, to whatever remains of Martin in the universe, aren't meant to be kept, they're meant to teach. The locket pulses once in my palm, warm against my skin, and I imagine Martin's voice agreeing, yes, love. Yes, I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know if Julia will ever truly apologize, if Nathan will face consequences beyond his own guilty conscience, if the foundation I've created will accomplish anything lasting or simply dissolve into bureaucracy and good intentions. I don't know if I'll live long enough to see Amara's first exhibition, or if the young designers I'm teaching will remember my name in 5 years, or if everything I've built, both the business and whatever comes after, will matter to anyone but me. But I know this: I chose peace over revenge. Legacy over possession. Light over the darkness of a locked safe. I chose to transform betrayal into something generative, to turn the ashes of one will into the foundation of 1,000 futures, to prove that even at 71, even heartbroken, even standing in the ruins of everything I thought I was building, I could still create something beautiful. The waves shimmer like molten silver outside my window. I smile, peaceful, genuine, free, and turn back to my sketchbook, ready to design whatever comes next.